Long ago, there was a dwarf who loved role-playing games. His love for the genre was so great that it would inspire him to tell tales of secret loves and redemptions, and heartbreaks and sorrows. His love was a flame that tempered his destiny to teach others of his flame so that one day they could carry that flame into a dawn of a new era. Yet, one day, that flame weakened, and eventually, the light faded into darkness. The dwarf realized he no longer loved RPGs as he once did. At first, he blamed himself, cursing the gods of time that he couldn't afford the dedication that the genre demanded. But while on his farm, he realized he had spent days toiling in the fields without a second thought, and that he could easily spend more. Time wasn't the issue. The dwarf then began to blame his age, blinded by the gods of nostalgia, to look crestfallenly at old loved ones and disdain the new. He couldn't enjoy Selfie Quest 3 with the dubstep soundtrack by Skrillex Experience. Dubstep's still a thing, right? It was the only justification he could think of to why he could play hours of Legend of Legaia and Final Fantasy Mystic Quest while not even being able to finish the demo of Final Fantasy 15. The dwarf shook his head.
No.
He said,
Nostalgia is strong, but it's not defining. It is only a symptom of a greater disease, not the cause. I'm sure of it.
It was at this point that the dwarf decided to go on a journey to find the answer and to see if there is a way to reignite the flame once more. He would visit the worlds he once loved and find the tinder that once fueled his passion and explore the lands where his love started to fade. But the dwarf had no idea where to start.
The beginning.
The dwarf mumbled.
The beginning is where everything starts. I'll start there.
And so the dwarf equipped the relics of his past adventures and started on a new journey to find the answers. He would play the first 15 minutes of 10 role-playing games and see if he could find the cause of his flame igniting and its eventual fading. This is the story of SoberDwarf and the 10 RPGs. This is a building character case study. This is the journey we'll take together. Let's gain some experience.
Our journey starts off with Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, developed by Intelligent Systems and published by, who else? Nintendo in October 2004. Now, Nintendo isn't known for its emotionally charged narratives or exploring profound themes, but they often provide a solid experience regardless. If nothing else, this should provide a good expectation of what we can expect from the games going forward. Paper Mario wastes no time explaining the basic premise of the game. Mario gets a somewhat suspicious letter from Princess Peach, saying she found a map to a mystical treasure while she was on holiday, and requests Mario to assist her in finding it. And already I'm a little worried. I'm not entirely sold on the idea of a treasure hunt as a main narrative. We just started and I haven't had time to immerse myself yet in a game where an idea of a intangible reward is going to be worth the investment, but the game still has plenty of time to win me over. After we arrive in Rogueport 3 minutes in, we're already given control of our character, and we don't even have time to leave the first screen before we're brought into the middle of a conflict between a female Goomba named Goombella and an entity known as Lord Crump, and his exposition is already hinting that there may be more to this simple treasure hunt. This conversation leads us to our first combat scene. It's a thinly veiled tutorial, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. Moving on to the next scene, we run into Toadsworth and we find out that Princess Peach is missing! don't think that was surprising anyone. Alright, so a lot's been going on, so let's slow things down a bit. Normally, with story beats coming at you this fast, it would be easy to be overwhelmed with all this new information. Mystical map, crystal stars, missing princesses. But Paper Mario keeps these arcs so short and concise and confined that most often they're just stated and resolved within the same scene. The game is more or less saying, "Hey Mario, Princess Peach sent us a letter, we should go to her."
Oh hey, you got a treasure map? That's cool, let's go to this guy.
Yeah, treasure map. We need to go here.
And that's really what the rest of our 15 minutes consist of. We're given information, told what to do with the information, then told to go do it. This opening is unapologetically simple, and I think that was done intentionally. For those of you who only associate Mario as a mascot platformer, this game is letting you know it might be a bit different than what you came in expecting, but not so different that it might cause you to run away. We're still saving a princess, and even though we don't see him within the first 15 minutes, I'm sure that Bowser isn't too far behind. The game is being upfront about a lot of this because most likely it wanted you to feel comfortable first. And it works, though I might not have been interested in finding a treasure or even care about this 1,000-year door. I already know in the back of my mind it isn't going to deviate too far from something I am familiar with. And the fact that it's going at such a quick pace with such guided direction means that there's always gonna be something to do. However, that alone wouldn't be enough. What has really been shining through has been the writing and humor. Every other line is filled with at least something that causes me to crack a small smile. Not only did the scene of the two guys getting roughed up in the background, while Mario and Toadsworth are just completely oblivious, got a little chuckle out of me, it also told me what kind of setting we're in. I also laughed when I ended up stepping on this person's contact lens, giving me a reason why this area is blocked off. The game also made me realize I laugh at people's misfortune way too often. I'm kind of a terrible person. But this opening isn't terrible at all. In fact, the only real complaint I have is that it's such a solid but standard opening that doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for discussion. I'm definitely not playing it for the story itself, but that sense of humor and even its style is pulled more than enough weight to make me want to continue playing. And most of that is because the game has been very clear since the beginning what this game is about and what I can expect. While not perfect, Paper Mario The 1,000-Year Door is an RPG I can see myself getting invested in.
And so the SoberDwarf found a small spark of the flame in the land of the 1,000-Year Door. The charm and humor brought a smile to his bearded mouth. But one spark alone was not enough to dispel the void still left in his heart. It was then that the dwarf realized if he found the spark in the light, he would also have to find the spark in the darkness.
Parasite Eve, developed and published by Squaresoft in March 1998. And wow, we're not even 10 seconds into the first cutscene, and BAM! A solemn pan of the Statue of Liberty, what looks like to be a tear of rust, standing in front of a snowy landscape of a modern, at least at the time of this game, New York. And I already have a lot to say. Without saying anything, the game has already told us about the tone and setting. We know that we're in New York, so we can infer that the game is based on our reality, lending a sense of believability and immersion. But more importantly, the game doesn't open up to a weeping Lady Liberty just to give you a sense that this is going to be a lighthearted misadventure. The game continues with a shot of the Prometheus statue in Rockefeller Plaza, informing us that it's around Christmas 1997, before our tour ends in Carnegie Hall. Then we're introduced to our protagonist, Aya Bree, a New York police officer on a date with her assumed significant other man. Yeah, the game doesn't bother giving him a name, so we can safely assume he's not important. Great, get out of here. Which is actually another great thing. The game is informing us that we're not going to be bogged down by information we don't need to know. Anything told to us is probably going to be important. Even the next scene after, an opera scene which seems to be pushing Squaresoft's agenda of high art, isn't wasted due to a clever use of foreshadowing. It isn't long before Aya and the lead actress locked eyes, and things start to get a little hot. We're not even 4 minutes into the game and people have just started randomly catching fire, and we're already in our first combat. Even as we're figuring out the game's combat system, the narrative is already hinting a connection between Aya and the villain, making our characters directly involved with this conflict, even though I still have no idea what the heck is actually going on. Paper Mario and Parasite Eve couldn't be much more than complete opposites at this point. Whereas Paper Mario was completely fine with showing us its hand from the get-go, Parasite Eve only shows us enough information to misdirect us. With a game placed in New York and starting you off in real-life locations, the expectations are the game's going to be more realistic. You're definitely not expecting a floating woman to shoot energy beams out of her hands. The actress makes a dramatic exit stage left, and from then on the game slows down just a little bit. We're now exploring the theater in order to find a key to open up all these locked doors, which usually have a bit of character development behind each of them. We see Aya trying to help a severe burn victim, her trying to evacuate a survivor, and see her mourn after she finds that survivor dead. But with a particularly gruesome transformation sequence of an enemy, and the introduction of items and random encounters, we are in the game proper. This isn't a tutorial. The last 5 minutes are rounded out by two very powerful scenes. The first being the discovery of Melissa's diary. The diary itself is a very good keeper's diary moment. Provides us with a bit of backstory of what happened, and also a little bit of misdirection. I mean, let's face it, we still have no clue what's going on. And in that diary, we also find the key to the rehearsal room, which leads us to finding that Melissa is no longer Melissa, but a mutated humanoid who calls herself Eve. And then we hit our 15-minute point with another challenging boss fight. Holy crap, I knew going into this that Parasite Eve had a good opening, but damn if I wasn't expecting how efficient it was. Replaying this for myself and just looking at all these small details it does, I have a newfound respect for this game and how it tells its story. There's no doubt in my mind that I'd be playing this game well past that 15-minute mark. This mystery of who or what Eve is and why Aya doesn't seem to be affected is an incredibly powerful motivator.
Pain and sorrow proved just as palpable to the dwarf's taste as joy, and thus he had collected enough tinder to ignite the flame and clearly see the path before him. But was the flame strong enough to guide the dwarf into the very lands that extinguished the flame once before? With fresh passion in his heart, the dwarf decided to look into the future.
Moving into the PlayStation 2, we have Xenosaga Episode 1, The Wilsamak, developed by Monolith Soft, published by Namco, and released on February 2003, and was written by Tetsuya Takahashi, the same man who developed Xenogears. And man, I already have high expectation for this opening. Xenogears had an amazing, if somewhat confusing opening featuring exploding ships, butts, religious symbolism, and kung fu mechs. So I'm really looking forward to what kind of insanity this game is going to offer. The game starts us off with an archaeological dig in modern-day Kenya, and the discovery of an extraterrestrial monolith. Actually, hold on, that's not entirely true. Our game starts us off with a 4.5-minute scene of discovering said monolith. And if I'm honest, yeah, it's a really cool scene, but the issue is that it just takes so long. It's obvious that they were trying to make this grand, awe-inspiring reveal that might have even evoked memories from Xenogears. But unlike how Parasite Eve used its opening cutscene to explain the setting or tone, this scene doesn't really explain anything at all. Who is that guy? Is he our hero? What's this thing? How'd he get this? Is any of this going to be important? Well, considering the very next shot takes us 4,000 years into the future, I'm going to take a fairly educated guess and say probably not. This whole scene, all 4 minutes of it, was dedicated mostly to the purpose to establish that whatever this thing is, it's existed for a long time and it's probably pretty important. And now we're in outer space and this thing is just floating. Meanwhile, while this is going on, there's another plot arc of a bunch of scientists doing science-y things which sound really scientific and important.
Ah, I see a small break in the MT field, route K12.
Oh.
It looks like the bi-directional link in the V4 field is lagged too.
Is that important?
Hold on a minute.
Okay.
I'll fix it now.
Oh, thank goodness. Then it's back to this thing. Then back to the scientist. Then back to the thing. This guy is gone. Now back to the scientist. There's a problem, but it's not a problem. Now back to the thing. Now back to the scientist. Now the thing is aboard the ship. Now we're in VR. Now let's have some exposition. Now let's have deep philosophical questions about creating a facsimile of life or war. And guess how long this entire process takes? No, really guess. Come on, just take a rough 13 minutes. This entire intro takes 13 minutes from pressing start until we get player control. In that same amount of time, we were already in our second boss fight in Parasite Eve. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is when we actually gain control, it's in the form of a combat tutorial. Not dealing with a real threat or conflict, it's just the game telling you how to play the game. And after that tutorial, it's Cutscene City, baby! And that's it. That's our 15 minutes. 13 minutes of scenes where we're being vaguely told a story, and 2 minutes of being told how to play the game. Alright, let me take a step back and try to explain why this is an issue. These aren't bad shots, they are definitely trying to invoke a sense of awe and power. These are what we call establishing shots. Much like Parasite Eve, this entire shot is designed to say, hey, you know that Kenya's a real place, and archaeological digs probably look sort of like this. This could really happen in our world. These shots with the scientists really do a good job at establishing that, hey, you know that scientists are real things, and it's super futuristic, and now they're talking space jargon, so this is really plausible. We even get a little bit of interesting character development between our protagonists. To give credit where credit is due, that is decent directing. But it's bad storytelling. It might seem like I'm contradicting myself, but there's a small nuance between the two. Storytelling isn't just about conveying a narrative. Good storytelling conveys that narrative in a way that connects with the audience. Just for an example, when I make a video, I could just tell you the facts. Final Fantasy VII was released in 1997 for the Sony PlayStation after development proved too difficult on the Nintendo 64 hardware. But what does that mean to you? What does that have anything to do with the game you loathe or love? My job as a storyteller isn't just to present you with information. It's to give that information to you in a way that connects to you. It's to explain how during the development of Final Fantasy III, the mother of producer Hironobu Sakaguchi had passed away, and how the themes of loss and identity found its way into Final Fantasy VII, as just a way he was exploring that in himself. Storytelling is about making the context connect to the audience, which will make the rest of the facts mean something more. The narrative of video games are primarily storytelling mediums, and the audience is that person at the end of the controller. Regardless if the story is about them or not, since they're the ones in charge of moving the story, it's important to make them feel part of it. Paper Mario does this by actively telling them that they're important to move the story forward. Parasite Eve puts this mystery in front of the player, knowing that if they don't solve it, no one else is going to. Xenosaga, at least for the 15 minutes we played, doesn't really seem all that interested in the player's involvement. The fact that it just throws in the tutorial and goes back to a cutscene makes the experience feel like the game is rolling its eyes and saying, oh, I guess you can play, but hurry up because I'm not finished talking yet. And for a series that has 3 entries, it's such a shame that it starts off so poorly. Xenosaga would be a game that I would have a hard time getting into. As a player, I want to be involved. I want to feel like I have agency, that my actions and decisions are going to have some effect in the world the game built for me. As good as the writing and directing may be, Xenosaga feels like it doesn't need me. The first 15 minutes, quite possibly the most important part of showing what your game is about, it only trusted me with a tutorial. That lack of agency makes it difficult for me to invest myself what's happening in the game. And imagine that, we're not even 3 games in and we're already starting to make some pretty interesting observations. I think we're gonna figure this out, but now we have another issue. How exactly do we tell these large epic stories with all this incredible world building and character development, and also be sure that we have the player involved? And is that even the heart of the issue, or is it just another symptom of a bigger problem?
For the dwarf, a brief moment of clarity showed the winds of change. They extinguished the flame once before, but it seems, for every answer, there's just another question. But there are still 7 more stories to explore. What will the SoberDwarf find in these worlds? Will it be enough to enlighten the curse on his soul? Or will he be doomed to never know the cause?
Join us for part 2 of this building character case study, where the dwarf looks at his past in order to find the answers for the future.
And so, our viewer asked himself,
How can I be sure not to miss the next exciting episode?
It was then that the narrator explained that by subscribing, the viewer can see all the episodes of SoberDwarf the day they release. The narrator added that he could also follow SoberDwarf on Twitter, like him on Facebook, and join the official SoberDwarf Discord in order to get updates to the channel as well. And for those who wish to support the show, they can go to patreon.com/thesoberdwarf and become a patron just like these fine adventurers. The narrator finally ended by fading out, reminding everyone
that gaining experience builds character.